So for more than 30 years, Leadership Montgomery has worked with local leaders to help them be more connected to their community and to help them find ways to be innovative in their work and community impact. Through our leadership programs, community education events like these, and our corporate engagement work, we've led the way for local and regional impact and provided companies the opportunities to tap into their creativity to change how business is done here. Our programs and events illuminate local thought leaders, top companies, and provide leadership program participants and members the opportunity to make the needed connections to grow personally and professionally. It's through our work and partnerships that we meet our mission of educating, connecting, and convening leaders to advance Montgomery County. By highlighting the work of these top companies tonight, we're meeting our full mission in less than 2 hours, which is pretty awesome. But if you want to be fully connected with Leadership Montgomery and find out all that we have to offer, I suggest that you apply to our 2019 or 2019-2020 leadership programs. We have experiential programs for our top executives through our core program, a launch pad for younger leaders through our Emerging Leaders program, and for those close to retirement, we have our seniors program. Through these programs, we want everyone in this room to have the chance to improve the lives of those who work and play here. Through this shared event with American and Gene Technologies, we are an example of the connections that we believe in. Through their work, we love their vision of transforming the lives of people with we love the opportunity to share their vision of transforming lives with people with genetic medicines by being one of the top innovators here in biotech and gene cell therapy companies here in Montgomery County. Their slogan, "Where creativity cures," falls right in line with our vision for this county. Their novel approach to curing diseases should be celebrated and lead to a healthier community, so that we are really pleased with this partnership and this event tonight and excited to hear from our panelists who collectively are changing Montgomery County. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Cara, who's going to get us kicked off. Thanks.
Can everyone see me from over here? Does this work? All right, since there's no nose, I'm going to start going. So my name's Cara Lesser. I'm founder and executive director of Kid Museum, and we are thrilled to be part of this wonderful event tonight. We associate with the title of Hot Technologies and Innovation. We are about creating innovators. So Kid Museum, for those who are not familiar with it, is a startup organization born and bred here in Montgomery County that's all about reimagining education for the 21st century. We are a hands-on creative makerspace where kids are learning about creative problem solving through maker projects, hands-on working with new technologies as well as some old technologies, and discovering how they can make a difference in the world. So our focus is on getting kids to invent the future with creativity and compassion, and building the skill set to be the future innovators here in Montgomery County. So we are thrilled to be a part of this conversation and kick off some more innovation and innovative thinking here tonight. Very briefly, I should mention we have our signature program is in partnership. We have a very deep partnership with MCPS, and some of our partners from MCPS are here tonight. We have a year-long Maker Challenge focused on the sustainability question of what kids can invent to create to protect the planet. And this is culminating. We expect about 1,000 students to be demonstrating their ideas around what they can create to protect the planet at a big culminating event on May 11th at Gaithersburg High School. We welcome people to come out and be a part of it and share the energy of young innovators in the county as well. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into introducing our wonderful panel here. Let me say a few words just about how things are structured so people know how we're going to go about this evening's conversation. We're going to go down the row here and have each person give you their pitch, their 5 minutes, and I'm supposed to be the timekeeper for these passionate innovators of 5 minutes to describe what they are working on. Like many good innovators, many of them are working on many things. So we're going to try to keep it focused to 5 minutes, and then we're going to have an exchange with some questions that we prepared to ask the group as a whole, and then time for the audience to chime in with your own questions. So, without further ado, we'll start with Shahab, who I'm going to give the one-line intro and let everyone else then introduce themselves further. But Shahab Kaviani, for those who don't know, is Director of Social Connectedness and Innovations at the AARP Foundation and co-founder of Breezio, among many other things.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see, let's give this another try. Do we have to try another backup? Check, hello? Can I borrow yours? All right, that's done, thank you.
Nice to be here with you, everyone. And I can't say enough about the Kid Museum. My kids are there all the time. And we've also been to the summer events there too, so thanks for all you do for the community. I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of things that I'm involved with. First with AARP Foundation as the Director for Social Connectedness. We're trying to address the issue of isolation and loneliness amongst low-income older adults. AARP Foundation is the charitable arm of AARP. And I began paying attention to this issue actually with younger folks about 4 or 5 years ago, when we began seeing a rise in suicide rates amongst teens in the county. And as I started to study that issue more and you peel back some of the layers, it was very common that the individual was isolated or lonely. And trying to understand what were the causes and how can we address this issue. I began to realize that many of the social media and mobile sort of consumption habits and the attention economy are really complicating this issue. And so what can we do about it? And I then realized that older adults were at also a very high risk. So it's sort of on the two ends of those age spectrums. About 1 in 5 older adults are socially isolated or lonely, and it leads to heart disease, dementia, and other health problems. So at the foundation, as it relates to innovation, we have an innovation pipeline process, and one of the innovations that came out of that process is a solution called Connected Communities. And we received, so I guess you could consider me an intrapreneur. So we were able to develop a new concept that leverages the Alexa technology, and we go into affordable housing communities and help build tighter communities by helping older adults discover group activities, things to do with their neighbors, meeting their neighbors, sort of using the Alexa technology. And what's, I think, really innovative about that, and the big aha, was that voice is really optimal for older adults. You know, many of the amenities that we were afforded that we all use on our mobile devices, older adults have in some ways been left out of that, but using the Alexa technology, we can really unlock that for the older adults. So that's one piece of the work around innovation that I'm doing today. The other is the Breezio, which is a community engagement platform. And that started a little over 4 years ago, also here in Rockville, Maryland. And what we're trying to do there is accelerate the pace of learning amongst scientific communities and professional societies, as well as peer learning cohorts. So what we try to do is, you can think of it as sort of a LinkedIn meets, if anybody's on Medium, or uses Twitter to discover content and initiate conversations. The Breezio platform is an online place where you can take publications and have deep conversations inside the content. So not just, hey, here's an article, tell me your opinion about the article, but on page 55, where let's have a debate about the findings of this result. And those conversations can happen not only in the manuscript, but also inside of the videos. And we may have a chance to talk more about that, but just to bring it to life, one of the implementations of it is in partnership with the Maryland Tech Council and the state of Maryland to help build a richer pipeline for talent within private industry by helping college kids find internships, but also connect with mentors and help get coaching on, here are experiences that you ought to have, here are some credentials you may want to be pursuing, here's some interviews I can help set up for you to just make sure that this even taps into your strengths, that it is really, you're going to be set up to succeed in this line of work. So that's one of the exciting projects that Breezio is working on, which I think intersects with today's theme around building an innovation economy, which starts with talent. And helping the folks who are trying to solve problems get the resources that they need and the access to the content and the people to help them move further along. Thank you.
I guess if I'm going to introduce you, I can come back on this. So we are very fortunate to have with us Ola Sage, who is CEO of CyberRx, among other innovations in her past, but that's what we'll focus on today.
Thank you, Cara. And thank you to Leadership Montgomery and to AGT for hosting this. I am a proud member of the 2018 class, and so I know at least a couple folks are here for that. So CyberRx, this is my second company, and I am an entrepreneur at heart. This company is a cybersecurity risk and compliance assessment company, and we provide affordable software and services to companies, primarily small and mid-sized companies, to help them assess the cyber risks to their companies. Essentially, my vision is to help our community be healthier companies and maintain their competitive edge, because our community, the small and medium-sized business community, is the most targeted community in this area. And for many of our companies, we don't have access to the same quality of data, information, tools, and certainly not affordable. And so that was the vision that I set out with. And the innovation that we have, actually, the methods are, we applied for a patent application back in 2015, so just to tell you how long that takes, that's still, that's still in progress. But it's essentially a software tool that allows our customers to conduct self-assessments and also to take that to advanced levels that include audited assessments, et cetera. And it provides customized information that's just for that company so that they have a clear understanding what their capabilities are, where they have areas of exposure, and then it also provides them with information that they can use to make informed decisions about where to spend money. Because a lot of times there are a lot of great products and services out there, but they may not necessarily be addressing your particular company's highest area of need. And so what we say is we give you the data so that you can make better decisions about how to protect your company. In terms of what we're working on right now, it's one of the things that we've heard from our customers over the years, and we're now at about, I don't know, 12 or so states, is that it's great to know what the problem is, now what do we do? and where do we go to find that? And how can we trust the products and services that we're buying? So one of the things that we have been working on, which is really exciting, is essentially what we're calling a cybersecurity concierge service that connects specific products and services that a company might need to them. And through a process where we're able to qualify the companies and at least provide some level of confidence that they're not going to be making your situation worse. And so what else? There's another part to it. What's next? Oh, well, the big thing right now that's really kind of bubbled to the top in cybersecurity in general is this idea of cyber supply chain risk management. And that's a little bit different from supply chain risk management. So this is looking at the components that are part of a product or service and understanding what the risks are that they may create. So it's not lost on me that we're sitting in a life sciences company, but this is a big deal for companies that rely on products and software that they use for their businesses and not really having visibility into either where those components come from or how they're made or what risks they present. So that's something that we're also working on, particularly helping our small and medium-sized companies, because in many cases, we buy from larger companies. So how do we get insight into those kinds of concerns? So, a little bit about what we're doing.
Thank you. Next we have Bill Cronin from Xometry. Again, multiple serial entrepreneurship experiences here, but the latest venture is with Xometry. So why don't you describe that?
Thanks very much. It's actually Xometry. When I went to go take the job, my wife said to me, and I was going to run marketing, and my wife said, "How do you pronounce it?" And I said, "I don't know. I guess when I get there, I'll be the one who decides." So my career, I've worked at a number of big companies in the past. I worked for a dozen years at MasterCard, including overseas, and I've been kind of moving smaller businesses and startups as I go, partly because I kind of got tired of hearing that smaller companies where all the innovation is. It's definitely in both, as Shahab started talking about, as well as Ola. And a few years ago, I went to go meet the CEO of Xometry, a guy named Randy Altschuler, and he described to me how their company was going to completely change custom manufacturing. I said, "That's great! What is custom manufacturing?" And so what I learned, and what Xometry really is when you talk about manufacturing in America, all the press talks about, here's a huge factory that's going to happen or not, the Foxconn in Wisconsin. But in fact, there's 190,000 smaller manufacturers with less than 20 people across the country. And they're doing about $80 billion worth of work in various things. And a lot of it is changing with 3D printing. And you've got them spread all across the country. And on the other hand, you've got all these engineers and product designers and customers in big companies, down to startups, down to, I heard even tonight, middle school kids who are doing more CAD files and designing for parts and pieces that aren't like a million of something that you're probably gonna go to China and Mexico and go do, but you wanna make 2 of, 1 of, 10 of, 1,000 of. And so what Xometry is we created a platform where you can take that CAD file and you can upload it to our site, and we give you an instant price. And what we do then, you can buy it from us, you can you can machine it, you can 3D print it, you can put it in sheet metal, there's all sorts of different versions, metal 3D printing, whatever you need. And in fact, we then have we've built a network of about 2,500 manufacturers across the country, both large and small. And so we sell it to you, and then we actually place it we present it to manufacturers across the country. They don't pay to sign up, but they have to work their way up by delivering quality and strong scores. So your work, the work of an engineering, a medical device firm out of Maryland could be done in Montana, it could be done in Texas, it could be done in a wide range of different places. We're responsible for the quality of it. In the past 5 years, we've grown pretty fast and furiously. We are funded by customers who became investors, BMW and GE. So we're like a tier 1 supplier for BMW car parts. That's really what our business is about. Challenges for us in innovation are really twofold. One, how do we make it easier for customers to upload and buy things? Like engineers oftentimes, when they see that they can buy this online like Amazon, they're like, oh my goodness. Because in the past, it would take days and hours to go back and forth with files with a number of manufacturers. And on the other side, we're helping the small manufacturers grow their business. And it's super heartening for us to see that they get to hire another person, to add a machine, this is very much of, when you think about kind of small manufacturers in America, and they actually get excited about doing work for big customers. They're like, I couldn't do work for NASA on my own. They'd never find me, but in fact they do, and they get to do really cool and interesting stuff. A few things for me on innovation that I think have just kind of been stuck with me, both at Xometry and throughout, is that I think it's incredibly important for people to look at things in a different way. I have a map on my wall that I've had for many years, and it's a map of the world, and it's upside down. I actually had it in the basement where my kids were until they started to get older, and then I thought they were going to get really confused and get it all wrong in school, so we had to change it. But to me, I kind of always encourage people to look at the data in a different way, and you will find something different. I was reading something just even online the other day that was about they were doing they had done a study of, in World War II, the bombers, and when they landed, they looked at all the places they were hit, and they said, that's where we should put the armor. And then somebody realized very smartly that these are the only planes that are coming back. Those actually aren't the places you have to armor, it's the other places you have to take care of. And I think the key thing there is that you can look at the same data points in different ways, and to think about it in an innovative way is to look differently at it. The other piece for me is about, and Ola got to this as well, but it's just listen to your customer. The best advice I got in my first job in advertising was listen incredibly closely to what your customer is asking for, and then deliver what they want, which isn't always exactly what they ask for. Sometimes it's the same thing, but they're not going to give you the path to everything, but they will tell you what they want. And so those are just a few things that have been exciting for me, and kind of in terms of kind of how I think about innovation on a daily basis.
All right, well, before Jeff speaks, I have to thank Jeff for hosting us here in this incredible facility. We're going to hear about the work that he's doing, really inspirational. I had the privilege of connecting with Jeff first last year through David Petter at MCEDC, and he said, you need to meet this guy and hear what's happening up in life sciences, and it's really cutting edge. And as we were looking for shining examples of innovation to put in front of kids, Jeff was top of mind for David, so it's really an honor to be with you again here tonight and to host all of us here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know how I follow that. I hope I can live up to it now. So I think of myself as a technologist, and I was born in Boston, and in the 70s I fell in love with computers, primarily because I looked at them and I said, this is going to make life easier for so many people. I was like everybody else. I hated just being bored and doing rote activities over and over and over again, and I could see that computers would be a way to get out of that, where they would just repeat things accurately over and over again and start automating things like the adding of numbers, accounting, spreadsheets. At age 15, I started wandering around MIT, and they were amazingly open there, and I think that's a very cool, sort of lesson in terms of how education and just people that are really interested in STEM can, infect other people. But what I got infected with was I saw robotics and sensor technology, A to D and D to A conversion, and I realized computers are much bigger than adding numbers and formatting documents. They'll reach out in the world and automate everything. And it started a lifelong, sort of love affair with that, which brought me to Silicon Valley, and I worked actually before that I taught computers at Harvard and MIT, and then I got recruited by Hewlett Packard, and then I went to Apple, which sort of lit my fire for almost something that I already had excitement for, which is that it isn't important what the technology is, it's what the technology does for people. And it's how can you get it into a state where people can adopt it. And it's interesting that you made that comment, Bill, about listening to your customers, because Steve Jobs was almost the opposite. He would say, they'll know what they want when I show it to them. Which I think is something to think about. Like, it is possible to have a vision for what the technology can do that other people haven't caught on to yet, and you can actually skate to where the puck is going, as opposed to just going ahead and making one innovation after another and slowly stepping towards the goal, or just figuring out what the next problem is. So anyway, I had a good career in Silicon Valley, and I ended up retiring at age 40, and I got bored at about age 46, and I thought, I should dabble back in it. I don't want to go back to the 15-hour days of startup life, because I was at Apple, which was already quite demanding, but then I went on to startup companies of my own, and it was really a 24/7 thing. It's quite a commitment, and so I was ready for a vacation, but after 5 years on the beach, I was ready to get back in a little bit. I thought I'd invest, and that ended up bringing me to Montgomery County, which, sitting in Silicon Valley, MoCo, go MoCo. Think MoCo, go MoCo. It's really interesting, just to take a break from technology for a second. Sitting out in Silicon Valley, I barely knew that Maryland existed, never mind, Montgomery County. And since then, I've really fallen in love with this county. And a lot of it is because of just the quality of the people that you get here, and the quality of the education, and just the commitment to society in a way, to our fellow mankind, and leveraging technologies like the ones that you're hearing up here. And this just turns out to be a great place to grow a business. It's got some things that, some challenges that in Silicon Valley there are some other resources that are around, but that's the core of what's great about Montgomery County. So I came out here, and has anybody heard of NIH? Did you know that NIH is in Montgomery County? I didn't. But I came here and I met a guy named Roscoe Brady, and he showed me viral vectors. And for those of you who may not know what viral vectors are, they had learned to crack open viruses and scoop out the viral DNA, and you can put in whatever you wanted. You could essentially convert viruses into updates. If you have a computer, you understand the difference, right? They come in the same way over the internet or whatever, but one makes your machine worse and one makes your machine better. But they're all basically the same. They're little code segments that update what? The operating system or software on your computer. Well, I immediately recognized that for the first time ever, I'd seen that we can update the operating system of the human cell, DNA, for better health. And right there at the meeting, I said to him, this is going to be miraculous. Blind people are going to see again. People are going to get out of their wheelchairs and walk. The lepers are going to be healed. What can we do with this? It's almost like, what can't we do with this? How much of our daily life, how much of our happiness, how much of everything in our life has to do with how well our body is functioning, and track down to genetic defects or genetic differences and things like that. The potential is just amazing. Can we cure every disease on earth? Maybe not every disease on earth, but the number of them that are going to fall to this, to me, was just intuitively obvious that day. But then there was one more question, and I think this is really the innovation in AGT. So, to say, why are we different than every other company that's leveraging this reality that now we have viruses that can carry new software into your cells and improve their operation and mitigate disease? It's that I thought about, well, what's the most efficient way to get this enormous power, this amazing potential to as many people as possible? This really goes back to my Apple days, where we were saying, yeah, personal computers are bicycles for the mind, but they've got to be accessible, they've got to be usable. Like, how can we get this stuff out there as fast as possible so that everybody has a computer in their house, and then eventually everybody has a computer in their pocket, right? And for that, it was the graphic user interface, which, by the way, when I was at Apple, everybody told us we were crazy. They thought it's not important. That's not how computers are used. Computers are used by experts, right? Who like to lean back in their chairs and put their feet on their desk, and they like that little keyboard that they can put in their lap, and a mouse is just a hassle. Having to reach forward all the time? If you're leaning back in your chair, this is a hassle. And we heard that all the time. So what's the innovation here? It's to recognize that software for the human computer is no different than software for your computer. And how do we leverage that? What we do is we make fundamental innovations in a platform of tools and reusable components that can be mixed and matched to cure a myriad of diseases. How do we get it there the fastest? We make an operating system for this computer. Something where eventually, and it's not happening today, but one day, writing a cure for a disease will be like writing an app on an iPhone, where most of the heavy lifting is done for you. And what do you need to understand? You need to understand the industry you want to go into. Is it, putting together all of these disparate manufacturers? Is it, automatically looking at cyber concerns? Is it joining people together? That's what you have to have expertise in, is what? The genetic underpinnings of the disease. Once you know that, you have a platform that will give you a targeted therapeutic that hits exactly that pathway in therapeutic levels in a safe way, and only turns on in cells where the disease is present. That's the power of gene and cell therapy, and the best way to leverage it is the same way that the last software revolution really just took off. And that's what's special about AGT. We spent 7 years at the fundamentals. We said, we're not experts on lentiviral vectors, we're not experts on AAV, we're experts on software for this. And what's that about? It's knowing what works and even knowing what doesn't work. Thousands of experiments that didn't work that taught us what doesn't work. But it's also thousands of experiments where we learned about commonalities across many, many different diseases that we could pull out and we could use as reusable components or enabling technologies that we could patent and that we could bring out to the whole world. Sure, we're the only ones using that platform now, but eventually one day you'll see that a whole bunch of drugs could be based on things that are just licensed out of our intellectual property portfolio. And think about this. There are 5,000 to 6,000 monogenic diseases out there that are just basically one broken gene. It's almost embarrassingly obvious that how do you fix a genetic disease where you just have one broken gene that's not making what you need? You just go ahead and find that gene and put it into the cells and it'll start making what it needs and it should go away. It's never really quite that simple, but these 5,000 to 6,000 monogenic diseases will all eventually be in the scope of this new software. And you know how much money we're spending on that today in the world? $2 to $4 trillion a year on palliative treatments to keep people comfortable that have these monogenic diseases that could instead go into cures that wouldn't just reduce the cost of treating these people or maintaining these people, but it would increase their quality of life. Just like the computers I fell in love with, I thought they would do for everybody. So technology, STEM, all these things all tied together, and creativity is a great theme. It's to think out of the box, like Bill was saying. That's why we say creativity cures, is because we say, look, it's sort of like a little flash of genius when you realize what you have, the tools that you have, and where there's actually some low-hanging fruit where you could go ahead and you could apply it and you could enhance a life or save a life or something like that. So what are we doing with this? We have a cure for HIV going into the clinic, we think, by the end of this year. And we've got blood data that makes me 99% convinced that we have it. We're going to cure HIV, we're going to convert it. They converted it from a death sentence to a life sentence of taking a painful chemotherapeutic that gives you early aging, bone density issues, osteoporosis, liver and kidney disease, and things like that. But you have to take that pill every day for the rest of your life. Well, we can convert that to cure. And then after that, we've got a drug where we can inject it into a solid tumor, and it causes almost a vaccine effect in your body, clearing that tumor and all the related tumors. It's called the stimulation of gamma delta T cells, and the results so far are 85% complete remission in mouse models of a variety of epithelial solid tumors. What are those? Breast, prostate, lung, liver, colon, kidney, ovarian, pancreatic, head and neck, skin cancers. This is the power of gene and cell therapy. This is the power of creativity. This is the power of the minds and the education and the inspiration right here in Montgomery County. And I think this is going to be huge, not just on the street, but everywhere. It's a very exciting time that we live in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
More to come. Now we're going to transition into Annica Wayman, Dr. Annica Wayman, who is helping at UMBC here at Shady Grove to help create some of the pipeline for much of this work. So she is the newly formed program around translational life sciences technology at UMBC.
Thank you. Very tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. But I think the point you made around the potential for finding solutions to these debilitating and life-threatening conditions is right at our fingertips, and that's what makes biotechnology really exciting. One of the areas that I find exciting being an engineer is the nexus, this intersection that's growing between engineering and medical devices and your biologics and your pharmaceuticals. For example, you mentioned the cell therapies, personalized medicine, creating these tabletop devices that can actually enable personalized medicine to happen. You know, having your small bioreactors, which are protein purification all in one closed system, so that you can make these small batches to actually make these therapies be usable to customers. A lot of combination devices as well, where you're taking the drug product that is now pre-filled in a syringe to allow more convenience for patients to do self-injections of the medications themselves, which is really important when we're talking about remote areas, trying to treat patients. So those are the types of cool new innovations that excite me, is this intersection more of the engineering technologies, medical devices, with the biologics. But whether you're talking about these cool innovations or you're talking about your more traditional pharmaceutical drug treatments, the education of students to prepare them for these biotechnology jobs is due for enhancement. And so UMBC, in collaboration with Montgomery College, which I think I saw Margaret somewhere, has developed a new bachelor's program that we're launching at the Universities of Shady Grove here in Rockville in Translational Science. And for those who may be wondering what Translational Science is, we are not talking about translating scientific terms into another language like French or German, or RNA translation. We are translational science, which you also might hear called translational medicine, is that overarching process of how do you take the cool scientific discoveries and actually make them life-changing commercialized solutions. And so we have developed a program in this area, training students on the drug discovery and development process that American Gene Technologies and others undergo. In that process, there are, as you probably are familiar with, a lot of different functions that exist. You have your R&D function, quality systems, biomanufacturing, marketing, and others. And so what we're doing in the TLST program, this is a bachelor's degree in translational life science technologies, so we call it TLST for short. And in our program, we're training students on these areas. We're giving them exposure to these different functions that they would see in a biotech company through their classes. So we're taking like traditional theory-based classes and understanding that you might have in a biological program traditionally, but combining that with a practical, real-world understanding of what they might see in a biotech company. We're infusing chemistry and engineering as well in these classes to give them a more interdisciplinary understanding of the problems. So some of the classes they might take are in applied cell biology. They'll take statistics, being how important it is for clinical trials, bioinformatics, they'll take biochemical engineering, and they'll also take biomanufacturing, among other classes. Their last 2 semesters, they also do an internship to give them that direct exposure to what they would do in a biotech company. And again, because there's so many different functions, that'll give them a chance to see for themselves. Do I like clinical trials? Do I like R&D? Helps them to get their foot in the door for getting a full-time job. So we're really hoping to train students to hit the ground running and be competitive for the jobs in the biotech area. So why Montgomery County was a question as well. UMBC was very strategic in selecting Montgomery County. The hundreds of biotech companies in Maryland, 75% of them are here in Montgomery County. And so being here, near all the biotech companies, was really important for us. We look to really collaborate with the companies here. We want to make sure our program is relevant to what your needs are in terms of workforce development. And so various ways we see collaborating. We love to see people from biotech companies being instructors for our classes, guest lecturers. They may come in and lead a lab that we're doing that's based on a problem they're grappling with at their company. So there might be some entrepreneurs here who need a little extra cash. If you're interested, come see me, because we love to have instructors that are working in the biotech industry now. The other reason Montgomery County is really important is because I think there's a really diverse, untapped talent here. At Montgomery College, that has about 55,000 students, we see they're educating a lot of our students, and so it was important to partner with them. So we work closely with Montgomery College. Of those students, thousands are in biotech or biology, and so we developed our TLST program in collaboration with them to provide another opportunity for students as to what they might do after their associate's degree in one of those areas. And so we're really excited about that as well. In terms of what's next, so once our program is fully launched and we're in the new building over at Shady Grove, we definitely don't intend to stop there in terms of how we're innovating with our degree program. In the near future, we hope to have a concentration in bioinformatics, so we're really excited about that. And then hopefully down the line, we'll also do a concentration or a track in biomanufacturing as well. That's a huge need that we see here in terms of workforce development. And then eventually we want to have a dual degree program that pairs with our professional master's degree in biotechnology, which we're also moving here to Shady Grove in the fall. It's been on main campus for the past 15 years or so, but again, being here in Montgomery County makes sense because of all the companies here, and so that will be coming in the fall as well. So we want to train students and have them be interdisciplinary, critical thinkers, that as we're thinking about what are the hottest innovations we want to put out in the next few years, we want students that have the interdisciplinary critical thinking that are going to help move these things forward. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to jump into some of the questions that we thought of in advance of hearing all of these wonderful talks, but I know there's lots more that's coming. So we're not going to go down the line and have everyone answer every question. We're going to try to keep it lively and ask a few people different things. I want to start with, Bill mentioned the upside down map as a reminder of sorts of keeping those creative juices flowing. I wonder if you can talk about how that how you spark creativity through day to day in your business and to keep it evolving.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges is how do you help people think that way? And I'll give two examples. One of which is we've been growing really fast. When I joined, we were about 30 people. Now we're about 200 people. So we get to bring a lot of new people onto the team. And one of the things I asked them when they come, I said, write down the things that you think are crazy about what we're doing now. And then in like a month or two, let's look back at that list, because you're like, why are they doing this? In 2 months, you're gonna think the same way the rest of us do, but I wanna capture now what are some of those things. And inevitably, you look at that list in about a month or two, and inevitably a bunch of them will probably were doing the right thing, but there are a number of them where you're like, absolutely, why are we doing it that way? That makes no sense. And so I think there's things like that. I also, encourage people, and this sounds really, really basic, but to make sure you set up like brainstorm meetings. I was once talking with my team, and I'm like, yeah, we brainstorm all the time. They're like, no, we don't. I said, oh, all right. Well, then we should set up a brainstorm meeting, and by the way, come up with a topic, and bring people that you would not expect to normally be in the meeting there. And you will get different points of view. It always amazes me across organizations that people who are not in the functions that they have, and there's certainly some that the legal group may not agree with things like this, but the reality, like I was at USA Today one time, and we were redesigning the paper, and the finance person was like, why don't we put color on both sides? They said, oh, no, there's a reason why we can't do that. I said, what's that reason? And there'd been a reason like 10 years earlier, and they'd forgotten why you couldn't do it. And here was the finance person making a great point about design. And so, the answer is you can find ideas from across the organization.
Great. Shahab, I'm wondering if you can jump in on that as well, share some thoughts about how you keep the creativity flowing in the many ventures you're involved in.
Sure. So, one of the interesting things about going from starting your own companies to a more structured environment and a corporate innovation is they give you the vocabulary and methodologies that you sort of do intuitively, but do it in a more deliberate way. And one of the tools that is, depending on the company, they have their own systems. At AARP Foundation, it's called I6, and the idea of going out on a regular basis, we almost have a quota, if you will, of customer discovery interviews that we conduct, and those are not done just to discover a new innovation. They are constantly done to inform solutions that are in the middle of the pipeline, that are in market, and may inform new innovations. So those customer discovery interviews are done using maybe 3 or 4 people that will go to the audience that you're trying to solve the problem for, and with no assumption of, what you have a high level theme of the problem, but you let the individual, the person you're trying to serve, really articulate that for you. And the reason you have multiple people there is people are picking up on different highlights in that conversation. So we always find so many new surprises there. We bring them back, we type them all up, we post them up on the boards, then we have the innovation team go and read and try to draw those themes out. And every time there's something really eye-opening through that process. So that's been very effective in a more sort of deliberate way within corporate innovation. I think personally, mine has been, my approach has usually been trying to solve problems that I'm experiencing individually or within the orbits that I'm traveling in, and trying to think of new approaches. So, for example, at the co-founders lab, the problem there was that recognized that the main reason why these companies are failing are founder-related issues, and that research led me to Dr. Noam Wasserman at Harvard, who had really said that the biggest reason why these companies are failing is that they're not the right combination of entrepreneurs. That's why we have such a high failure rate within entrepreneurship. So it's like, all right, what if we got more scientific about that? And that's where that sort of idea came about to create this sort of eHarmony for matching folks. So it was really just, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Let's try to, and you have to really feel that yourself. I think the entrepreneur or the innovator has to be feeling that intimately on a regular basis to really figure out what strings to pull on to try and solve that. And that's just, getting out, and you have to be in the action, right? I mean, talking with people and constantly reading and going into multiple disciplines that you're not familiar with. So, I'll go to I'll be at your next gene therapy seminar that you're doing, because that approach, the way that they think about that problem is like bringing a musician into a math problem. It's just, they can just slice through a new window that you never saw before. So I think bringing interdisciplinary teams, and that was one of the sort of inspirations behind Breezio, is to bring these interdisciplinary teams together, whether I'm talking with a scientist about an industry I have no idea about, is really a point of inspiration, and to try to keep that sort of fresh perspective.
That's great.
Can I just make
Yeah.
a comment? I completely agree with that going, wow. Is it working? Oh, okay. I completely agree with this idea of bringing in other disciplines that are not specific. Actually, Jeff, as you were talking, I was thinking we're going the other way, right? So, ironically, my company's name is RX, right? Prescription for Cyber, and we take a lot of lessons from the medical, community. And so, in terms of sparking creativity, absolutely. The other thing that I want to mention, which is really specific to Montgomery County, this is just a beautiful county. We have over 420 parks, if you didn't know that. And so for me, creativity, a lot of times I draw it from nature. And just taking a walk, there's so many different places, and it inspires sometimes design ideas about, how I want the user interface, or just different things that are just sparked by just being in nature and taking advantage of that. I think it's a unique thing I'm sure there are other beautiful places in the country, but we just have so much here.
Interesting perspective. Jeff, so do you bring the musicians into the math problem, or how do you guys do it here?
Yeah, I'm learning a lot from being on this panel. It's really fascinating to hear everybody's perspective, and I think that kind of makes both your points again. It's like, or all three of your points, and everything in general, that coming at things from different angles really opens up opportunity for creativity. And I started to think about, okay, so how am I inspiring creativity around my own company? And I think I'm kind of trying to model it a little bit like what inspires creativity in me. And that is by bringing in the right people who are going to be naturally creative. They got to want to solve problems, right? I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. So if you have a desire, or a need to solve a problem, then you will tend to think, hard about it creatively. But I find that all my creative moments happen during non-work hours. And the make or break for me is that I have passion for what we're doing. It's that it's critically important. I'm thinking about the fact that we have something that could potentially cure a type of cancer that's taking 1,000 Americans, only Americans, that's not even going outside of the country, per day. That means every 3 days there's a 9/11 of epithelial solid tumors, and I'm looking at mice that have 80% complete remission, and that just fills me with like this almost need to get there as fast as possible. And it isn't something that I'm thinking about at work. I'm thinking about it 24/7. And some of my best ideas are as I'm going to sleep at night, or if I wake up in the middle of the night dreaming about something, and I'll pull my cell phone over and send myself an email about it so I won't forget that I had this idea. And so that's what I look for in the environment. As I say, if people are smart, and they have a good work ethic, so they're not lazy basically, and then they're passionate about something, then they're going to be creative. And then if I could just keep enough money that I can keep a good building and a good team of people like that, and if I can go ahead and espouse a vision for the future that is emotionally engaging, that will get people behind it and they'll want to join me in that future, and if I can create a mission-driven culture that says we can do it, then it's just, this team will come together, and I tell everybody, surprise me, but surprise yourself, right? Yes, I want, I don't expect perfection out of you. I'm only expecting greatness. People love that. But it's a drive, Some people have it, some people don't. We don't need 100% creative people in the company. But I think that the more people that you get that have what I call, the AGT spirit, that are curious, are smart, curious, right? That feel like, yeah, let's get something done, let's do something with our lives. That's that sort of work ethic. Then they find something that they fall in love with, like I fell in love with computers. That's why I was teaching it at MIT and Harvard, as a teenager, was because I just fell in love with computers. So passion will drive you, it'll pull you along. After that, it's just teamwork, right? Just get in here and, work together and let's just solve problems. And I think that a huge amount of creativity comes out of that. But I felt, listening to you guys, you had some really specific ideas, and the weird thing was, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not thinking creatively enough about creativity.
We learn from each other, right?
Yeah,
no shortage of ideas. Let's let Annica chime in on this real fast.
Yeah, I have to chime in on this one because just to underscore what people have already said, I think it starts with who you bring in. Are they creative? Are they passionate about what you're doing? The logistics of things can be taught, because if they're passionate, they're going to learn it. But are you bringing in diverse talent as well? And so we talked about, diverse in terms of disciplines, definitely diverse in terms of thinking. You want people who think different than you. Diverse in terms of ethnicities as well, and gender. So are the people in your company looking like the customers you're serving? Do you have 50% women? Because 50% of our population is women. I just actually heard an interesting speech by Maj Jemison, who talked about crash test dummies are built like a man, and you actually see a higher rate of injuries and deaths among women for accidents because the crash test dummy that we all base it on is not built as like a woman. So, just making sure that you have that diversity, because it does bring a difference in thinking. Even in my previous job at USAID, that's why we funded local researchers to do the work, because they had the context as to what's really needed in that country, what's going to have them actually stick with their regime or use that bed net. if you don't understand that culture, then what you're trying to develop will maybe not be as successful. So I really do encourage that. And to your point, allowing that space. Once you bring in the good talent, then you give them the space to innovate. And don't, give them a nice building, the time to think about it, give them the space to fail. And I think when you do that, then that creativity will continue.
I think that's great. Skills of the future, the kids and adults who are designing our future is to serve a much more diverse world. We live in a globally connected world. We live in a diverse world in our communities here, and we need to design for that whole experience. So I love that. So no shortage of ideas, creativity flows, but then how do you prioritize and make decisions about what leads to follow that can drive the innovation and improvement that all of your companies and ventures are working toward here. So Ola, I'd love for you to start with your thoughts on that. How do you prioritize lots of good ideas?
Well, wow. That's an ongoing work in progress. Can't have 10 priority ones. We generally start with what our customers tell us they need. Right? Bird in hand is worth two in the bush. That old saying. And so that helps us. We do have a technology roadmap and all of that, but that's our guide. But in terms of how we prioritize, that's usually kind of what drives us. After that, then it becomes a function of kind of competitive kind of determinations, like, are there particular laws or things that are driving certain outcomes that we want to make sure that our customers are ahead of. That's kind of more on the kind of macro level. Kind of internal, it really is a day-to-day thing. In my former company, bringing it into this one, we had this concept of daily huddles. And literally it was 15 minutes of kind of what is our priority today, who needs help. We weren't solving the problem there, but we were identifying what the issue was to work outside. So building in specific processes, techniques to help you do that, I think are helpful.
Bill, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure. And it's definitely something we live with every day. I think you might as well just put your software team in a room and say, okay, our biggest challenge is how do you prioritize all the things that need to happen? And of course, people like me all want it all to happen. But I think that, there's two pieces, one of which is, I think one of the most important things is to not just listen to the squeakiest wheel, because that's often the trap that you fall into. I think there's probably a combination of two things, one of which is listen to what your customers need, and then two, it kind of combines with what Jeff talked about, the vision of where you need to get to, right? And I think that's always one of the biggest challenges, like, do I fix the 7 different things that I know I need to fix, or do I do the thing that I really want to do out here? And frankly, I think that's often, it's a judgment call of leadership, to say, here's what we think is right, and here's what's more important to where we want to be as a company, and here's our mission. And if this doesn't fit into that mission, that's not a priority for us.
Great. So Annica, is that something that's teachable? Can you teach how to balance that creative idea generation and balancing that with prioritizing vision and customer needs?
It is difficult with some, different personalities, different strengths people have. Some people only want to be in the visionary ideation stage, and it's hard for them. But I think that is kind of, the role of leadership. I think ideally, you don't want one person doing all the outward visionary stuff and someone else is doing the day-to-day grinding, logistical. So if you can parse it out among each person, where a portion of their portfolio is in that immediate type of work, and then they also get a chance to do the visionary work, I think it keeps them inspired in terms of continuing to work and gives them reason for why they have to do that day-to-day grind. But I think it does kind of go back to, as you're prioritizing things, you want to have that healthy balance and, your strategy. of what to, that really is your guiding light for how to prioritize. And so in the beginning, it probably is a little challenging because you're kind of grasping opportunistically as to what you need to do. But hopefully as you continue on, within those years, a strategy will form that'll help guide you in your prioritization.
So follow-on question to that for you, Shahab, for teams. And Ola's talking about daily huddles. You're not going to have a huddle of a 200, 300 person organization, right? So what's the size of a team that's really effective for this kind of daily maximizing the innovation that's happening within an organization?
Well, the companies that I've started have, at least my involvement with them have been around 25 to 30 people, and then from there, either they're acquired and they begin to really start to scale. I think 10 to 15 is the real sweet spot, and that includes the practitioners, maybe developers or whatever industry that you're in. So you have the specialists and you have the business builders and the innovative team, and probably some folks that are customer facing, they're serving or discovering what customers are looking for. That's a really sort of optimal size. So I think it's, maybe a different way to look at it is sort of at the different phases. So on a daily basis, our team sizes are no larger than 5 when we're doing the innovation work. They are distilling information from other stakeholders, and in a maybe slightly more bureaucratic organization, there are many more stakeholders, so you're trying to synthesize all that, so just that synthesis piece can take some time. So I think in the sort of ideation phase, maybe sort of around 5, early implementation around 10 to 15, I think, was a sweet spot, and then sort of early scaling, I found around 30, and then from there it's just you're scaling, and you're up to maybe a maximum of 120 folks. Jeff, how many people are with AGT now?
30.
About 30 people, and that's maybe the speed that you guys are moving at. I think could be attributed to that. So I think we're probably experiencing the same thing.
A little proof point there on the panel, right? So one more question from up here, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. So be ready with your questions you have out there. We've talked a lot about aspiring entrepreneurs, and curious as we think about the talent pipeline here in Montgomery County, what types of experiences you would encourage aspiring entrepreneurs to gain as they want to develop these skills. And Bill, maybe we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, look, anybody who are aspiring entrepreneurs, I give them all the credit in the world, because I think a lot of that comes from inside from them, and it always amazes me to see the different things that inspire people and what they learn from different jobs, whether it was waiting tables or being a bartender or something, and as you recruit people, you always find these really interesting things that come out of each part of their career. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that you don't know where it comes from, and people can do the same job and pick up different things. So, from that standpoint, I think it can come from a wide range of things. There's such an opportunity of other businesses. I think, when we talk about innovation around here, there's such a number of great different types of businesses between medical, between related to the government and technology. There's such a wide range of both ideas out there that can be taken from one industry and attracted to another, and I don't think anybody should be ashamed of taking one idea from one industry and making it work somewhere else. Has phenomenal opportunities, and I think one of the great things here is that I think you'll find that a lot of people at leadership level and otherwise in other fast-growing businesses are happy to talk about it. And they're happy to share what they learned, and they're happy to help along the way. And I think that if I were an aspiring entrepreneur, I'd encourage you to go and talk to people. It amazes me sometimes you see the notes that get written back from CEOs and others and key things to people who are just getting going.
Kindness of strangers, right? Annica, anything to chime in? You're helping to train aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that we do train some future entrepreneurs through our program. I think it touches on what was kind of mentioned before is thinking out of the box, thinking across disciplines as to what might be possible. Really having that critical thinking of, why isn't that working, and why can't we do it that way? That kind of thinking. And I think, as I was listening to you, again, we have, I think, a diverse, untapped talent here. And, I want to make sure students feel comfortable being confident in their experiences and drawing on them. Not being ashamed of how you got to where you are, using that as an asset of, I understand this market better because of maybe the struggles I had to get here. And so, being confident in who they are and knowing how they can leverage that to be an entrepreneur in whatever industry they choose.
That's great.
I don't want to hold the mic, so.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, I don't know why I keep getting the
So this, like I said at the top, this is my second time around, 18 years between the first and the second company. And I would say often to folks, starting the company was the easiest part. Is, it's not for the faint of heart. However, there is hope. And I think there's this concept that, I'm sure I'm not the first to talk about it, but this idea of developing innovation muscle, similar to your, when you train as an athlete and, it kicks in, like how do you do that? How do you create innovation muscle? And for me, it's come down to three things. One, it's about curious listening, just listening curiously and in different areas, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life, but just being curious. And then the second piece of it is learning how to ask better questions. Because when you ask better questions, it leads you to better decisions. And when we talk about better questions, it's really about questions that don't lead you to closed answers, so open-ended, and just learning how to do that. And then the third piece is just constantly be learning, and learning from different places. It's not uncommon for me when I'm traveling to go to the magazine section and pick up a magazine that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that I am involved with. Just so that I can see and learn from a different perspective. So those are all, I'm sure there are other pieces or other ways that people can, but that's what I would offer to a young aspiring entrepreneur. Be a curious listener, ask better questions and learn continuously.
That's great. Well, let's ask some better questions out here. All right, we have some mics up.
Back it up and inspire the students in MCPS schools and other schools. I remember I went to visit Kids Museum and I was like, you got to tell me what they're doing because I have no idea what these projects are. So I'm going to do a shameless plug because we talked about cultivating the talent pipeline. So my colleague Elaine Cheng-Baxter and I are hosting a summer career exploration program. It's July 8th through the 26th. So we're hoping that this program gives our students in Montgomery County Public Schools an opportunity to dabble and to learn about all your cool industries. So we hope everyone will check it out. And there's information on the Leadership Montgomery website, and Elaine and I are happy to connect with you. So.
Great opportunity to develop the talent pipeline. I'm not sure there's a question in there, so we're going to go to another question if there is out there. Oh, behind me. Yeah. Wow. I don't have to travel far.
Hi, Fizi Halima with Montgomery College. I wanted to ask any of you, I never heard anything about funding the company and or a profit. When does it translate from innovation into an 18-year company where you actually get to the maintenance part? Sometimes the excitement or the passion gets you going, and I know several serial entrepreneurs who love that part of the business and actually leave and sell the company because they want to maintain that portion. But for those people that simply want to create, innovate, and then sustain, what advice do any of you have for helping them keep that business going?
That's great. And why don't we turn that one to Bill, because Chief Revenue Officer on the panel, he should answer that one. That's right.
My job is to keep money coming into the company and keep growing it. Look, I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, I think if you look at a lot of businesses, you know, the key thing in order to be a successful business, in order to sustain it, is to drive growth. And I think in many different industries that has different time periods and lengths, and I couldn't begin to explain on medical how long that takes. So I think it varies tremendously by business. I think the important thing is being committed to building a great company. And if you're really focused on building great solutions for your customers, things that people want to engage in and drive, and you've got a great mission for your business, all those things are different steps along the way that may or may not make sense for different businesses at different times. And I think there's always the challenge of, do you pour money into growth and keep driving that, or do you become more profitable? And there are right decisions for different companies at different times.
It's great. Right sizing your revenue expectations, right?
Yeah. So I think the idea of creativity could also play in that as well. And so I'm not sure whether your question is about early stage, or is it about sort of late stage companies and how they transition over to just being profitable? Is it more the early stage?
It's a leading question, because what I'm looking for, honestly, is how do you invest back into your employees and keep that going? Because once you've got a team, don't you have to train and innovate and keep the employees? Do you invest back in the employees themselves to keep them?
I answered them completely wrong.
Yeah.
No, I think we have a slightly different question. I heard your question differently too, so I think we have a second question from down here about how you invest back in your employees to keep growing the innovation and growing the company. So Jeff, why don't you take that? We'll take one more question and then have time for the panel to interact more informally.
I don't know whether I'm the best person to answer that. I mean, we pay competitive salaries, and when somebody wants to be trained in something, we pay for their training. But I really look at it as personal responsibility and ownership over your role in the company. And so if you're doing job X and you're really an inspired person, and hopefully you're inspired by the mission and the vision, and you're excited about this, and so you want to do something great, then you're looking at yourself and you're saying, what do I need in order to be successful? And you've got an executive team and a management team that wants to respond to that, right? Who's best at knowing what's going to be the best conditions in which for you to do your job? If you really care about what you're doing, then you're going to be the best one. So I wander around the company and I try to find out, what do people need? And a lot of times what I find out is it's like they need ergonomic stuff and they didn't even think to ask for it, right? Or somebody's already taking a course and I'm like, hey, that's great, we'll pay for that. And they didn't realize that. But so I think that investment back in your employees is an attitude. I had taken your question totally different. That's why I wanted to chime in. Is that, one of the things I think is important to entrepreneurship is to figure out where you belong in the company. It's so attractive to be the person at the top and the figurehead, and the idea of making a boatload of money. That certainly sounds good to a lot of people. But that's not what entrepreneurship is about, in my mind, is that if you went into it because you wanted to make a boatload of money, then go to Wall Street, and figure out how to, game the system and make money that way. No, the entrepreneurs that are on this stage, had a desire, they had an excitement, they had something that they discovered that they thought was special, and that, like I was saying earlier, that they fell in love with and they wanted to go there. And if you go at it from that direction and you figure out what your skills are, and if you can build the rest of the team. Now, as a CEO, it's my responsibility to build that team and do more of what you were asking about, is how do I continue to invest in them and grow them. But, I think that that's the key thing, is that right people in the right place. Our CSO is an amazingly creative scientist, but he couldn't raise money to save his life. And, but I can raise money, but I can't go to the bench and do the work. And so, you know, a venture like this takes a lot of different types of people, and you know, that was sort of.
I don't know, Shahab wanted to weigh in on this quickly, and we'll see if there's one more question. No, that's going to be it. So Shahab, weigh in.
Sure, I can keep it quick, and it's another dimension to what Jeff is talking about. So when we're investing in the employees, I try to identify what is it that motivates that individual and what their strengths are. So for some, it's recognition. Okay, well, when we're doing public speaking activity, let's find a career path. And when I talk career path, they're short, like 1 quarter, 2 quarters. How do we train you up to be able to do that? For some, they want to get published. For others, they want maybe team recognition. For others, it's to influence the product. And so really understanding what those sort of motivating factors are, aligning them with their strengths. There's also a great book called The Alliance that's written by the founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, and you know, one of the key concepts in that book is that identifying where that individual is trying to go before you hire them. And you don't need to lock them up for 10 years. It might just be 2 years. I've hired folks who are aspiring product managers. They've never done it before. When you're a startup, you have to trade different non-monetary currencies. And so we were able to bring some, you know, invest in them to develop them as a product manager. And we had a plan, and it was, when he wanted to leave in 18 months, it was not a surprise. And so getting those, that sort of common destination clear and upfront, and really working together towards that.
All right, on that note, we will break up from the microphone part of this conversation, but know that folks will enjoy continuing the conversation in the lobby here, and thank our panelists, please, for sharing their wonderful stories.